Thank you so much, Julian. For me, this is also a very special panel, and I'm super grateful to have both of you here. And I think it's an overlooked topic that needs much more attention than it's been given today. And this is really what we're going to try and shed some light on something that is a much bigger part of our society than I think most people realize. And one thing is the fact that it's an issue many people deal with, but it's also, I think, what you're going to help us is also kind of explain a bit more to understand the many facets of psychological abuse, gaslighting, emotional violence. There are many words to describe it, but also then Boniface will bring some perspective of how does this imprint in our bodies, and what do we do? But I will first like to ask you, Sherin, if you could put your words to what is your definition of psychological abuse? And I think also, again, it's a topic with a lot of taboo. I think also a lot of lack of knowledge. So maybe it's a good starting point to kind of explain a little bit what it actually is and how extensive it might be.
Yes. Back in 2014, I started the first NGO with a specific focus on psychological violence. At that time, there wasn't like therapy groups for victims of psychological violence. There were crisis centers, but most people connect crisis center with victims of physical violence, even though they also treat victims of psychological violence. So I myself, I was subjected to psychological violence. It was a kind of what we call coercive control. There were rules for everything in my house, my social living, what to wear, how to look, what to think. So I think psychological violence is, it doesn't leave any physical bruises on your body, but it leaves eternal bruises inside. And in 2014, when I started nationwide therapy groups for victims of psychological violence, still it wasn't criminalized. So psychological violence became criminalized in 2019, 1st of April. And we have like a social definition of psychological violence, and there is a legal definition of psychological violence. So the social definition sounds like this. Psychological violence in close relations are repeated actions that humiliate, insult, manipulate, threatens, and isolates. And these actions can happen in affect or they can be planned. But no matter what, the purpose is to control the victim. So that's the social definition of psychological violence. So what we have to notice here is that if you are being humiliated, insulted, manipulated, threatened, or isolated, you're subjected to psychological violence. But these actions has to be repeatedly, systematically, because we can all endure being insulted or manipulated or humiliated. So when do we know that we're subjected to psychological violence? When there's a pattern, when it becomes systematically, then we know that we are subjected to psychological violence. I myself at that time, I was extremely embarrassed and I felt very shameful because I was in that situation. I come from a very a family. I had never experienced anything like that before I came in that relationship. And my father, he's a political refugee from Syria. My mother is a Finnish immigrant. So me and my sister Natalie, we were brought up in a family with lots of love. And so when it happened to me, I felt too ashamed to say anything. So the more violence, the more facade. The more violence, the more I had to achieve something. And actually, when I started the Exitcircle, I was still in the middle of the psychological violence, but nobody knew. But in 16, I came on the other side.
I think what you're saying is a classical pattern, right? That it's actually because in our society, it's one thing is physical violence, and not that is also a terrible thing, but the psychological violence is easier to hide, and I think many respond, like you explain, with shame by just putting up a facade and really not sharing with anyone, because it's not something we have addressed or talked about. It's not normal to come out and say, I'm actually a victim of this. But Boniface, I'm also curious from your perspective, how does this actually affect us? Our body, our mind, because I think that's, as you also pointed to, Sherin, this leaves a lot of trace, just in a different way than a black eye or a bruise that you see physically.
So first of all, thank you for having me here, and it's not easy to go after such a poignant start. I related to doing what I do now through, anyway, it tumbled upon me, and I'm going to try and go into the history of it, because I'm an osteopath, and I've been doing this job for 23 years. And at first, as most you would imagine with osteopathy, you start with the body. People come to see you because they have a physical issue. And over 23 years of doing this job, I realized that a lot of the presentation, so the symptoms that the patients were coming with, were not really coming from the physical realm, as it will. And this is where it's really interesting. I'm going to give you a little bit of history very quickly, because and not many people know that, I did a thesis on the vagus nerve 24 years ago. And this is why I'm sitting here today. But the idea of that then was just to try and understand why babies, newborn, were suffering from colic. And my hypothesis was that...
I need to your microphone.
Sorry about that.
It's not your fault.
Is it good?
Is it better now?
Yeah, it's not. You're not so loud, but.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Can you hear out there? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yes. Okay. Great. Thanks. So the idea was that there was an irritation in the vagus nerve, because when baby come out from the vaginal canal, they can have dystocic compressions and all that. We're not going to go into this now, but it just opened the door of the vagus nerve, and by doing so, we realized at the time, this is 24 years ago, there was very little review and literature review on it. Anyway, I dug deep into this. And then through the patients that I was seeing, I was understanding there was so many dysfunctions that I was seeing that was not really understandable, and doctors had no idea, and specialists had no idea, and these patients were at loss, really at loss. And where I'm going now with this is that most of these patients were female patients. And I was trying to understand what was going on here, and then that opened a much different way of looking at the job of an osteopath, which was to really listen to their stories. And in doing so, I will bring to you a definition that I now have of abuse, which is literally has been coined over 20 years of practice. And for me now, abuse is a situation in which if you had the agency, you wouldn't be in. Can you hear me? I can see yeah, sorry. I have a lot of background noise as well.
Exactly.
It's really difficult to speak because I can hear everything around me.
There's something, now it's better.
I'm sorry, guys. Yeah?
Yeah, now it disappeared.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. It was really...
It was difficult, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I could hear people speaking over there.
Yeah.
No, the problem is I'm gaining you up, because I think the microphone is...
What do I do?
No, keep this. Hang on for a second.
Sorry, guys. We are just...
Oh, actually, no, hang on. Can you say something?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Say again.
Can you hear me? I'm being challenged there. This is good.
Yeah.
Good. You're going to see live how it is to find repair. Is that good now? For you? Okay, super. So I just want to repeat this because this is really so important. I think that weaves with Sherin is abuse is a situation in which if I had the agency, I wouldn't be in. So it's not just what we expect. It's starting again. I'm sorry, the background noises. Yeah. It's not just what we expect, meaning physical violence or sexual abuse. It's also territorial abuse. It's also societal abuse, religious abuse, systemic abuse. It's very different. And now we explain that this is why kids are more the receiver of abuse, because they have no way to go. They have no agency. So what does agency mean? And this was the big part of my job then. It was like, we go, I guess, into how this affects us and our nervous system and our capacity of repair and bouncing back. But when people are attacked systematically, slowly. It's so deconstructing of people's path to repair, and they don't necessarily see it. So when they are in this place where they know it's too bad, shame kicks in, but also they have no mechanism to come back from it. And this is where I'm trying, not just me, all the organizations around, to re-empower these people. And I'm speaking about women here because it's true, it's the number, I can't lie about it. For 23 years, 80% of all my female patients were victims of abuse. In this big definition I was just mentioning, it's enormous. And some men too, again, and I'm very, I'm not trying to just make this a female issue at all. But maybe if we can continue on this, I'm just going to carry on and say, what are the physical things? So, because that's maybe something that people can relate to. And I think there are 5 points that are really important. Number one, and this is why people come to me often, there's a physical reaction. And we call that muscle bracing. So basically, when you switch from feeling safe to feeling vigilant, you start having a bit of chronic contraction of your muscles. And people feel that mostly in their jaw, in their throat, will come back on the voice, in their chest, and in the diaphragm. And I'll stay on the diaphragm for a second because you all know this is the breathing muscle, and obviously they kind of keep it up a bit contracted and high. The diaphragm has many more functions. It also helps with digestion, it helps with posture, it helps with it's the floor to the heart. So when your diaphragm is tense, you have a tension around your heart, and that impacts your emotions as well. So that's the one thing, emotional bracing. And on a chronic point of view, that becomes exhausting. We'll go on to how much energy we all have, and we can't have constantly spending energy on muscle tension. That's energy we can't spend on other things in our body. Number 2 is our nervous system dysregulation. If you're here, is that you've heard a bit about the nervous system. And what happens is when you go from a safe space to a vigilant space. A vigilant is a very good word. It's not yet threat, because this happens in your intimacy, right? This kind of, and we could talk about maybe perverse narcissism, because that's often the king of the gaslighters in this world. They do this so insidiously that you don't really recognize it at first. And that's how it's the insidious coming in that distracts and dysregulates you, because you oscillate between being hyper aroused, feeling of anxiety, a bit heart palpitation, a bit hot, to be hypo aroused, and you're just tired and sluggish and disconnected and disembodied. And that oscillation between the two is exhausting, but also leads to a dysregulation, and you don't know how your nervous system should be calibrated. So it's very hard for you to connect to people and to do what we are trying to do every day, which is to co-regulate. To do that, you have to have a base that means something to you. So that's the second thing. The third thing, which I'm very passionate about, is the gut and the brain axis. You've heard about this a lot. And I'm going to talk here about one incredible thing about the gut. So these patients come and they've been diagnosed with IBS, and they've been diagnosed with issues with their immunity. The link between what we're talking about and the immune system is incredible. Think about, and not many people know this, that 60% of all the contingency and 80% of all the agency of your immune system is along your gut barrier. Now, why would that be? This is because it's the biggest gateway for any pathogens. This is where the outside world will come inside you, right? Through absorption. Now, this is just one cell thick. Imagine like a cellophane drape that has to control all this incoming of possible pathogens. That's where your immune system is. Now, more poetically, if you think about what it means, it also means that you let the outside world come in. But if your outside world is threatening and dangerous, you don't want it to come in. What do? You lock this site of entry. And that brings what people say phantom illness, but I think there's a good word for this. It's a physiological echoing of emotional harm. And these patients are just so confused. Am I taking too much time? I have just 2 more points.
It's okay.
And my 4th point is, when this carries on and carries on, the only thing that these patients can do is actually disconnect and become disembodied. What else? So they basically use what we call the posterior branch of the vagus nerve and just disconnect from it, and they can't feel, they're numb. But also what they can't do then, they can't feel safety again. We've gone too far down the line. So even if they're like, look, I think there's something to do, I need to pick up myself, they don't have that agency in their physiology and metabolism anymore. That's the tragedy of it. And it's disembodied, so you don't even know. And this is where abuse goes worse, because then, as you may know, and this is another tragic number, most of rape, for example, happens within relationships. They don't happen in the back alley. They happen but these people are numb, they can't fight back, they're there. So it's as if the perpetrators have kind of broken them so much that now they can go even further and do such thing as interrelational rape, which is tragic. And the last thing, in terms of symptoms, that would be it, is emotional flashbacks. And it's a very key point. So you know you're at the end of it. And these are patients coming to you and saying, I do not know why, out of nowhere, all is cool, and I have, so we call this panic attacks, for example, you have palpitations, you are sweating, you have a physical manifestation of your body remembering this accumulation of trauma without the conscious capacity to access it. This is real dissociation. Now, when you're there, and it's very easy to understand still tragic, in PTSD and big things, but when it's happening insidiously, this is what we have to understand. What we're going to talk about now is insidious. And Sherin talked about shame, and I think shame is an extraordinary topic to weave into this, because shame is a construct of society. We can talk about this later. But we then feel shame for not having been able to see it. How did I fall into this relationship? Am I not clever? Etc., etc. I'll stop there for now.
Thank you. Very insightful. And I think you touch upon so many aspects of why it's so important to word all of this and have a conversation about it, because again, if what most victims of this type of violence do is basically disconnect, shove it away somewhere far, far away, but I think also many people don't really want to admit that they're in the situation, and that's also back to you, Sherin, and your work, and you're trying to create a space where it can be safe to actually come and maybe accept and be honest about the situation a person is in. But how do you experience this? How do we help people in these situations that happens way too often? How do we help them into a place where you are not shameful toward it, or where you actually can seek help? And I mean, you wrote a book also about 12 strategies out of psychological violence. 10, sorry. Not, 10. But anyways, but I would also love for you to touch a bit upon that, because that's the next thing. Okay, how do we then actually, we understand now how impactful it is, not in a positive way, but how do we actually help people out of it?
In the Exitcircle, we have established a 10-step program to the victims of psychological violence. And the first step is to create a language about psychological violence. What is psychological violence, and how has it affected me? So we give the victims a language for psychological violence, but also sexual violence, other forms of violence. You pointed out that sexual violence is more than rape. Sexual violence, actually we have, through one of our colleagues, we have identified 10 different forms of sexual violence. And if you're subjected to sexual violence, you're also subjected to psychological violence. And when the victims, they get a language of what sexual violence is and all these more subtle forms of sexual violence, 9 out of 10 in a group would say, I have been subjected to sexual violence. But before they have a language, they don't know. So first of all, you have to know what you are subjected to. And then we have, there are 10 steps, so I would highlight one of the steps. It's called security behavior. You also underlined it. When you're subjected to violence, in order to survive, you will develop a kind of security behavior. And it's a behavior that saves you in the relationship or in the family. If you're a child and you're subjected to violence in the family, how will you survive? This is your house, you can't escape. And even if you're an adult and you're subjected to psychological violence, even though the door is there, you're a free person, nobody is holding you back, but still the psychological violence can hold you back. And so young people, children, adults, they will have to survive. And different forms of security behavior could be to lie, to live a double life, to create a facade, to become submissive. I remember in my relationship, he told me that you can do anything, but you just have to ask for my permission. But you can do anything you want. And in the beginning, I was like, what? Is he kidding me? Is this for real? And then I realized that it was for real. And so what happened is that you slowly normalize the psychological violence in order to survive. So normalizing things that are not normal, living a double life, lying. I will share a story with you just to make it visible what psychological violence could be about. And it's a story, and of course I have permission to share it. It was a woman. She was in a relationship. She met a man, and they were really in love, and she wanted to present him to her closest friends and her closest girlfriends and their boyfriends. And she had known them for many, many years. So she came with her new boyfriend, and they were having a dinner, and they were eating, and he was sitting close to her, touching her, curling her hair, whispering in her ears, making her feel good and comfortable, and he made everyone laugh at the table. And she was so really happy, proud of him. And then, after they had dinner, she went to the kitchen with one of her best friend's boyfriend to, fix the dishes and make the dessert. And she could hear him make everyone laugh in the room. And then they came back, they sat down, and he took her close to her, and he whispered in her ears, like kissing her at the same time, and he said, "You fucking bitch, what are you doing? When we come home, I'm gonna cut up your throat." And she was just smiling, and he kissed her at the same time. And what did she do? Did she stand up? Did she tell her closest friends, this is happening? No, she was quiet. She was submissive. Why? Because it happened before. So this guy, he was extremely jealous, and he was exposing her to what we call coercive control. So he had set up a prison in the house, controlling every single part of her life. And so this is just to tell you that psychological violence, it's a hidden violence, and in order to survive, you have to normalize it. And this is the way you survive. But security behavior is normal behavior and understandable behavior. So we tell the people who are in our groups that it's quite normal, and you did what you had to do to survive, but now we have to challenge the security behavior. So in order to get out of the vicious circles of violence, you need to do something that you haven't done before. You need to, and then we give them tools to set limits, to stand up for yourself, to have a language for the violence, and slowly to strengthen your identity, because it has been broken down.
And isn't that a big part of the challenge, is that slow kind of constantly having moved your limits and barriers without really knowing it? So maybe a starting point is like your boyfriend commenting on what you're wearing going out, and slowly it becomes to he's actually telling you what to wear, and then all of a sudden you're not allowed to go out anymore. I mean, that kind of slow increase where people don't really realize what is happening until it might be too late, and they're in a situation like you just described.
There is actually a very concrete way that you can track or see if you are in a violent relationship, a psychological violent or coercive controlling relationship. You can ask the question, what would happen if? What would happen if I'm going out with my friend to have a dinner? Or what would happen if I cry when I'm sad? What would happen if I have male colleagues? What would happen if I go to a party at my work with male and female colleagues? what would happen if I wear a short dress at work? So all these questions, what would happen if, you can ask these questions, and then you will have the answer. Because in a healthy relationship, you have the freedom to disagree. So what would happen if we disagree? And it could be extremely dangerous to disagree if you are in a coercive, controlling relationship or a psychological abusive relationship. But if you're in a healthy relationship, you can have an argument, you can disagree, you will listen to each other, and it will be okay. And you will have the freedom to be who you are. So often the victims, they tell us it's like walking on glass, eggshells. I feel that something is wrong, and slowly you lose your agency, as you said. So there's Per Isdal, who is a psychologist, he says, psychological violence, it makes you do things you don't want to do, and it makes you stop doing things that you would like to do. So that's also a definition of psychological violence.
Why do some people want to control others this way? Is there, I mean, I know that's a different angle to it, but it's also, where is this coming from?
Well, I guess we both have ideas of that. The shortest answer for me is 3,000 years of white male patriarchy, but that is somehow deeply wired into allowing men to think that there's a discrepancy in the way of power within an heterosexual relationship. I think that's huge. I think we totally forget, and these are tricky topics, but I'll just bring a few out. We are mammals, we are sapiens, and I'm big, I love anthropology, and I like to go there to find some cues. And in our species, most males are stronger than women. I mean, not just a little bit stronger, right? Okay, I know this is super kick-ass woman can do karate and kick everyone else's ass, but it's not the norm. Now, your unconscious mind, we're talking about this, the fact this watchdog that knows, is it safe, is it threatening, or is it dangerous? Do you think that will allow you to switch a different type of nervous system to be able to apply into your ecosystem? So, can I be co-regulating, safe and socially engaged, which is what you want to be, and this is where sapiens thrive? Am I in a threatening, vigilant phase? I'm going to activate my fight or flight to be ready for action if something happens. Or am I just already so overcome and overwhelmed by the danger that I want to be into this shutdown mechanism we mentioned? Now, anyone here, any man here, if I wanted to literally jump on Sherin now and put her down, there's nothing she could really do, right? And her unconscious mind knows that. Now, we override this because I'm not going to go and jump on anyone here, but I could. And the point is, male know this. And female know this, right? So let's just not fool ourselves with this idea. It's a very deep idea that is rooted in our constituency. That's one thing. And I think the third thing for me that is, and then maybe we can tap in this together as well, is through this 20 years in practice and seeing all these women abused in different ways, in such subtleties and this insidious way, the biggest thing I realized was that there's obvious, for example, perverse narcissistic behaviors, which is what we call grandioso. You see them arrive and they're all egoistic, it's all about themselves. And they chase women who are already, in a way, in the place where they're going to be able to apply this. That's kind of the obvious thing. Doesn't make it better, but it's obvious. Then you have, and this is incredible, a huge spectrum of men who will behave differently on and in a different relationship, which makes sense when you say it like this, but they're not systematically abusive. So you put them in a relationship where potentially the woman has already endured that, or is wired in this, or it happened in her home, or her dad did it, etc., etc. She recognizes this. You know that we recognize our patterns even when they're bad, not just the good ones. And these guys become it. It just switches that thing in them that wasn't there in the first place. And then I think maybe that's Sherin, but that's maybe what happened. There's a very curious one that it took a long time for me to understand. We call it the vulnerable narcissist. Now, these guys are super subtle because it surprises them. So they also were a victim of abuse. Something happened to them. They don't know that this is in them. They're super kind. They're vulnerable. This new, I guess, not new breed or old breed of men that bring back that can speak about their vulnerability, can be in touch with their femininity, just nice, all-round male. But when suddenly, and this is it, when they are in public, they're perfect, they're funny, they're so seductive, everyone loves them. And they come in and very subtly they turn into this other person. And it's on the borderline of personality disorder. Now, these ones break the woman so deeply and so progressively that it's, for me, it's the most severe cases. And because we're speaking about solutions, I think there's one solution, and this is, if there's one thing that today you can take away from my part of this conversation, is that you've had friends to which this happened, all of you. Because you see the numbers I'm mentioning, you do have. If it's not you, someone close to you in your family and your friends has happened. The only people who can help people like this are their friends. Family is very tricky because we are too ashamed. But you know why I say friends? Because they always see it. Even if we're super good at putting the facade, but you feel when you have your girlfriend and you used to go whatever to the movies every 2 weeks, and then she's like, "No, I can't." I'm like, "Why?" "Oh, and a weird excuse." "Okay, fine, once." And then it's been 6 months. She's like, "Well, come on, let's go to the movies again." And she can't go anymore for whatever. And it's always the friends who see it first. And for some reason, because manipulators will take them out of their circle of friends, but for other things, it's clever. It's not like you can't see them anymore because I don't like him. They will find ways. That's why I'm saying it's for us, and I really take this seriously. You have friends that are in this situation now. I can tell you that much. So be vigilant, but also, and I know we've talked about Tine as well, we have to be careful if these things are thrown out a lot. Trauma is everywhere. Narcissism is everywhere. You take, TikTok or Instagram, all you hear is about that. Now everyone is had trauma. Everyone is a narcissist. It's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that it is so good when community understands it, and you stay vigilant yourself as well. Say, have behavior changed? I wonder why. And as we just said, you come. What would happen if you were to come actually with me to the movies tomorrow? So you ask this what-if question to her if she never had the capacity to rephrase it for her yet, and then she's like, "Ooh." And you see it at this particular time. The way she looks, the way she reacts, the way she puts her face. If she's not like, "Yeah, nothing would be good." If there's a pause in that moment, something has changed and is wrong. And this is really important.
What was the initial question? Sorry. It was why...
I lost
Okay.
Why men do that? Why
yes,
people do
why,
that?
exactly.
Yeah,
why is it
yes.
men do this?
There
Or
are
people
12
do this?
women. 12 women in Denmark are being killed a year. It's 1 woman per month, and the number is increasing. And she's being killed by her partner or former partner. So there is an aspect of men killing women, and in all cases where men kill women, coercive control has been a part of the relationship. So we have to look at that. So in order to prevent the killing of women, femicide, we have to look at coercive control, psychological violence, because it's always there. There are very few cases with women killing their partner, but if a woman, in these cases, the woman has been subjected to coercive control as well. So we have to look at this term coercive control. What is happening? What kind of psychological violence is at stake here? And when it comes to men committing coercive control or psychological violence, and especially that form of violence where you're controlling the family, your partner, like in a very intense way. It's like a dictatorship at house. In most cases, the man, he doesn't really care about how she's feeling, if she's sad or frightened. Because to him, it's about having control, and he actually feels that he has the right to control her. It's his right to control the family, the children, and his wife. So this is what we have to notice, that he feels entitled. He feels entitled. So I also work with religious violence in the religious sphere as an imam. It's my volunteer job besides the Exitcircle. And I can give you 2 examples of religious violence or coercive control. when women are not allowed to have an Islamic divorce without the consent of her husband. And this is not only among Muslims, it's only also among Jews and Catholics. So how have we normalized a society, a patriarchal structure, where not only the man, but also the religious communities, they accept the fact that, yes, a woman can divorce, but in order to divorce Islamically, she needs the consent of her husband. So every Friday, I give Islamic divorces to women subjected to violence. Most of them are crisis centers. There's a very high security threat. And the reason is that she cannot get a divorce because he refuses. That is a kind of religious violence, and it is being normalized by religious communities because we have this view that the man has the last word. I would also like to underline that in the Exit Circle we have therapy groups for children, young people, women with children, but also men. So I just started a group with 11 men who are subjected to violence. So boys and men are all also subjected to violence, and they are also victims of violence. And if we have a family with a mother and a father, and let's say that the father, he's abusive towards the mother, then there will always be children, and there will be girls and boys. So boys and girls are subjected to violence equally. Everything that comes in has to go out. So my belief is that maybe girls and women are more likely to internalize the violence if they experience it in the family, and maybe some men are more likely to externalize the violence that they have experienced. 80% of men who commit violence have been subjected to violence in their childhood. So it's these repeating patterns and circles that we have to look at.
And I think, there's so much we could dive into, but before we end, I would love to ask one question, because I think also back to your point, Boniface, that yes, we all know people around us if it's not ourselves, but I think one thing is for people to realize they're in this situation, but I also believe you have a huge group of people that are in this situation. They are aware of it, but they have no idea how to get out. How can we help? How can I as a friend help? Or how can we as a society? How do you have a... we can go
seconds.
over, 30 seconds to answer that. No, but we can go over a few minutes, I hope.
There are nationwide therapy groups for victims of psychological violence in Denmark in 6 big cities. So if you know someone, you can recommend these therapy groups. It's 13 weeks, 2.5 hours per session, and they're all... it's psychologists and psychotherapists who are...
I'm just going to...
facilitating.
Facilitating the groups. I also published a book called 10 Steps Out of Psychological Violence. You can buy it over here after the session if you want. Give it as a present. But it's not a self-help book. It's 10 tools that have been tested over the last 11 years with a very, very good effect. So we know that it works in real life.
In 2 seconds, I think we talked a lot about what happens, which is a disembodiment. And so it's very difficult for people to know that this is happening. And there's a very nice sentence I'd like to leave you, is that when trauma comes silently, it comes out through expression. And when you are a victim of abuse, of a chronic abuse, your nervous system and your body is taught not to express itself or to feel itself. So without that first step, so if you think you are in this situation, the first thing that you need to do to empower yourself to be able is to reclaim a sense of self, to re-embody yourself. The first and the easiest thing to do this is to go in a place where there's no judgment, where co-regulation is at the essence, and it's called nature. Because this is made of nature, and there's only one place where you can do that without... Because a relationship with other human is a complex. This is complex co-regulation. But coming to a tree, coming to a forest, coming to a place and sitting and just knowing that you're a part of this, and a part of that, but this is you, is the first step. So nature's great, and obviously then we can build up from there in more complex state of co-regulation. But and expression is so important, because these women, again, all men, really have an issue with expressive themselves in the end. So is it art? Is it dancing? Is it suddenly, can I scream? I was telling you at the very beginning of this talk, this issue of tension around the throat. They lose their voice. They speak like this, like I was at the beginning. You know, they lose all capacity to express anything. So how can you do it? Lastly, we have to educate men. Not just to treat the people that are victims of this violence, because I have a 16-year-old boy. Who am I putting out as a father in this world? How is my boy gonna, he happens to be straight, but how is he gonna relate to his female intimate partners? This is my role. This is where it starts. We always have to go one stream up. So all of us, you have a friend, you have a brother, you have a nephew, observe how, and if there's abuse in their family, as we just said, it carries on. But we have to educate our men. This is the thing. I think this is my last point.
The people who commits most violence in Denmark is young boys in the age of 16 till 24 years old. So in order to combat violence and prevent psychological violence, I'm talking about psychological violence, we have to educate the youth. So I agree with you. So we have to go out to the schools, and they have to be taught about setting out limits, how to prevent violence, give them a language for violence, psychological violence, so you can set up limits and in order to prevent it.
Being kind is cool. That's what I need to tell her.
Yes. Thank you so much, both of you. It was inspiring and insightful. And Sherin, if anyone needs somebody that, or knows somebody, Exitcircle is definitely a place to start. But also, as you say, Boniface, I think for many that might be a step that comes down the line. Maybe the first step is actually to feel yourself, to connect. And fortunately, there are also many ways to do that if you search for it in nature, but also with guidance and great practitioners. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, panelists. Tina, thank you so much for the moderation. Boniface, can I ask one little favor for the audience before they jump up?
Yes.
Is there a 1 minute exercise you can get us to do to ground ourselves in this present moment right now?
On the spot there.
Putting you on the spot, mate. I'm sorry.
Right. No. I'm doing a little activation later if you want to join as well. The 1 minute thing, it's a bit, you've heard and seen this a million times, I'm getting ready for you. I think the best thing you can do, and actually, let's talk about reclaiming sense of self. This is a good one. Why is breathing so important? I'm going to start there and we'll do this one thing so you can carry that with you. It's because it's the only physiological system in the body that has double innervation. I explained that. You're all breathing, you're not thinking about it. If I say, take an in breath, you can. So you have a somatic nervous system that you control and can do it, and you have your autonomic nervous system that you don't control consciously that does it. Nothing else has that double way of being controlled. What does it mean? This was 6,000 years ago. Everyone managed to understand the link through the breath and all the very tight, fine line where you can find this place between consciousness and subconscious mind. So the best thing I can do for this, and I know the vagus nerve is everywhere and we all wear these things and HRV, and it's great. But I will do a little thing here for you because the humming is probably one of the fastest things to stimulate and be specific. The anterior branch of the vagus nerve which brings you into the state of co-regulation and social connection. The best of all is one particular frequency which you know, it's the O. This is why everyone, lots of monks use Om. So if there's one thing to do together, we're going to do a big Om. Now, it's quite deep. I can do O, right? I can try where, if you can, bring it down. Bring it down in this part of your throat. I'm going to do one with you. We're going to take, wait a sec. We're going to take a deep breath in together, and we're going to do a very long, just O, okay? 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Panelists, another round of applause. Cheers.